Chapter 2001. This lake was located in the middle of the mountains and had a radius of about 100 miles. The lake water was clear and sparkling. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the surface of the lake, giving it a faint golden-red color. However, as the tribulation clouds formed, the sky became dark. The light of the setting sun was also covered. Strong winds blew on the surface of the lake, and huge waves surged. A terrifying heavenly aura came down and enveloped the entire lake, killing a large number of fish, prawns, and crabs in the lake. The demonic beasts living in the lake were all scared out of their wits. They rushed out of the lake and fled in all directions. Ji Tianqing stood calmly above the lake. He looked up at the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky and silently adjusted his breathing. Soon, the first heavenly lightning struck from the tribulation cloud vortex. Kaboom! 7 lightning pillars of different colors came down fiercely with unparalleled heavenly aura. Ji Tianqing waved his hand calmly and struck out a bright golden light. It formed a huge vortex and blasted toward the 7 lightning pillars. Bam 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 bam! The 7 lightning pillars were blocked by the vortex and were devoured by Ji Tianqing in the blink of an eye. Then, the second and third heavenly lightning bolts came one after another. 14 and 28 lightning pillars came down from the tribulation cloud vortex. Ji Tianqing used the same trick again. He used the golden vortex to block the lightning bolts and devoured them. After the third heavenly lightning, the tribulation cloud vortex began to change. When the fourth heavenly lightning struck, the number of lightning bolts had reached 56. Each bolt of lightning contained 5 different colors, and its power was several times more violent than before. Moreover, the arrangement and order of the lightning bolts also contained heavenly secrets. It was in line with the mysteries of the heaven and earth divine array. Boom 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 boom. An earth-shattering sound exploded in the sky and shook the universe. Ji Tianqing took out the sword of burial of heaven and stabbed out dozens of sword lights to meet the lightning bolts in the sky. With a loud bang, all the sword lights and lightning bolts collapsed into billions of pieces and scattered between heaven and earth. The shockwave formed by the 5-colored light carried the power to destroy everything and hit the lake and the mountains. The water in the lake evaporated, and the surrounding mountains collapsed one after another, splashing dust into the sky. Ji Tianqing was in the middle of the chaotic turbulence, unscathed and untainted by even a speck of dust. The 5th and 6th heavenly thunders descended one after another. The number of heavenly thunders kept doubling, and the power of the heavenly thunders also multiplied. Boom! The sound of thunder resounded through the sky, and the divine might suppressed everything. The heaven and earth within a radius of a few hundred miles became chaotic. The dried-up lake turned into ruins, and the surrounding mountains turned into dust. Only Ji Tianqing remained unscathed. He stood calmly in the sky, calmly welcoming the baptism of lightning. No matter how violent the lightning was, it couldn't hurt him. Half an hour later, the 6 bolts of heavenly thunder ended. The tribulation cloud vortex began to change and was dyed with a dark red color. A blood-red pillar of lightning descended from the sky and immediately enveloped him. Once again, he was enveloped by the blood-red light and fell into the illusion of the inner demon tribulation. In the illusory realm, he went through all kinds of trials and tortures, and saw all kinds of illusions. But with his strong willpower, he successfully resolved the inner demon tribulation. Moreover, he awakened many memories of his divine soul, and gained a lot. After the inner demon tribulation ended, the great tribulation of wind and fire arrived as scheduled. The heavenly wind, astral fire, and the mysterious black fire burned his body and divine soul. But with the help of the great tribulation of wind and fire, he continued to refine his body and divine soul, and his strength continued to increase. An hour later, the great tribulation of wind and fire also ended. Finally, the 9th tribulation descended. Boom! A bright silver pillar of light brazenly shot down from the tribulation cloud vortex. The 1,000-meter-long silver pillar of light glowed with a cold silver light, as bright as the moon. Ji Tianqing immediately raised his eyebrows, and a playful smile appeared on his lips. The power of stars? Could it be that the test of this tribulation has something to do with stars? When this thought flashed through his mind, the silver pillar of light had already hit him. The surging silver light formed a light ball with a radius of 15 miles and enveloped him. This silver ball of light hung in the sky like a bright full moon. Ji Tianqing was trapped in another space, enduring the test of the star tribulation. At this moment, he was in a vast and boundless starry sky. Under his feet was a dark and cold void, and in the vast starry sky around him, countless cold stars were scattered, shining brightly. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry. He calmly looked around and speculated about the test of the star tribulation. In the starry sky, there are only many stars except for me. The stars seem very close, but in fact, they are millions of miles away. It is reasonable to say that martial artists in the crossing calamity realm cannot move in the void, let alone absorb the power of stars. Except for me, there is basically no martial artist in the crossing calamity realm who can pass this tribulation. It seems that the way of heaven's test for me is becoming more and more harsh. Ji Tianqing thought silently, and his sharp eyes observed the surroundings. After a while, he found a clue. Thousands of miles behind him, there was a small silver light ball. He observed for a long time before he could barely see that the silver light ball seemed to be a door. However, the door formed by the silver light was floating alone in the void. Could that door be the key to leaving the void and resolving the star tribulation? This thought flashed through his mind, and he flew toward the light door with all his might. In just half an hour, he had flown thousands of miles away. It was reasonable to say that he should have arrived near the starry light door. But in fact, he was still thousands of miles away from the starry light door. It was equivalent to him walking on the spot, and he did not get any closer. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and fell into deep thought. There is indeed another mystery. I knew that the way of heaven's test was not that simple. Since he could not get close to the starry light door, he had to think of another way. Star attraction technique. Therefore, Ji Tianqing began to use the star attraction technique to absorb the power of stars in the starry sky. As he formed the seal between his hands, the stars in all directions emitted a cold silver light. Strands of silver brilliance gathered from the surroundings like thin threads and surrounded him. However, Ji Tianqing did not swallow the power of stars into his body. He gathered the thousands of strands of silver light into a bright silver light and spread it in the void in front of him. As time passed, a small silver bridge formed by starlight appeared. 2 hours later, the small silver bridge extended to 10,000 feet long. Ji Tianqing stepped on the small bridge and walked to the end. As expected, he was closer to the starry light door. It turned out that his method was correct. If he wanted to reach the starry light door, he could only use the power of stars to form a bridge. He was encouraged and excited. He used all his strength to use the way of heaven to control the power of stars. Before he knew it, 3 days had passed. Chapter 2002. Ji Tianqing had been casting spells continuously for several days and was quite tired. However, he didn't dare to stop and rest, in case another change occurred in the void. With his strong willpower, he tenaciously held on and continued to cast spells continuously. After 12 days, the length of the Bridge of Stars had reached 10,000 miles. He finally arrived in front of the starlight door. This door condensed from starlight was 100 feet tall. It was completely silver and radiated a holy and cold aura. Behind the light door was darkness, and layers of spatial ripples could be clearly seen. Obviously, passing through this light door would lead him to leave the void and return to the place where Ji Tianqing was transcending the tribulation. He was exhausted to the extreme. His face was pale, and his mind was weak and dispirited. However, his eyes revealed a deep sense of relief. He only wanted to pass through the light door as soon as possible. At this moment, a drastic change suddenly occurred in the quiet void. Thousands of stars all turned into dazzling meteors and flew toward Ji Tianqing. Whoosh 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 whoosh. In just 2 hours, more than 3,600 stars had gathered around Nie Tian. Every star turned into a surging silver light and drilled into his body. An incomparably vast and majestic star power immediately filled his body, causing him to swell and bloat. His originally empty magic power was immediately replenished. His originally weak and tired mind was quickly recovered. In fact, the star power was too vast. He couldn't even devour 1/10 of it. In order to not be blown up by the power of more than 3,000 stars, he could only pour the excess star power into the heaven-mending orb and the sword of burial of heaven. With the heaven-mending orb and the sword of burial of heaven helping him devour the star power, the pressure on him was greatly reduced, and his body quickly returned to normal. After an entire day, all the star power was devoured by him, the heaven-mending orb, and the sword of burial of heaven. Not only did he return to his peak state, but his strength had also increased by more than 3 times. Then, he stepped through the starlight door and left the pitch-black void. Swoosh! In the next moment, he returned to the sky and was still in the silver ball of light. Above his head was the tribulation cloud vortex, and below his feet was the ruined lake. Swoosh! The silver light quickly dissipated. The vortex of tribulation clouds high in the sky also quickly collapsed, and a ray of divine light descended. Ji Tianqing was bathed in the divine light. His body and soul were baptized, and his strength soared again. The 7th heavenly tribulation was finally passed. Ji Tianqing's strength had already reached an extremely terrifying level. He did not stop and continued to fly south. Although Ji Tianqing knew that he had to go through 3 tribulations in a row. Moreover, his soul also sensed that he would have to undergo another tribulation tomorrow morning. However, he wasn't going to wait here. He had to continue on his way. As for the preparation work, there was nothing much to prepare. No matter what kind of heavenly tribulation it would only be a little difficult for him and would not endanger his safety. Unlike ordinary tribulation transcendence cultivators, they had to carefully prepare for a heavenly tribulation for decades. After transcending the tribulation, he would have to recuperate for at least a few more years. Ji Tianqing was a monstrous existence and couldn't be judged by common sense. The day passed quickly. The next morning, he sensed that the heavenly tribulation was about to arrive. He landed in a vast and majestic mountain range. In the majestic mountain range, the morning fog shrouded, and the dew was fresh. The sun rose from the east, sprinkling golden light that covered thousands of miles. There were many birds and beasts in the mountain range, happy and content. What a peaceful scene. However, the tranquility here was soon broken. A gust of wind blew in the sky, and endless gray clouds gathered to form a black cloud for hundreds of miles. Thunder and lightning flashed in the black cloud, and hurricanes whistled between heaven and earth. The invisible divine power of the heavenly Tao enveloped a radius of hundreds of miles, turning this area into a forbidden zone. The mountain forest was in chaos, and thousands of monsters were scrambling to escape. Those weak monsters that were frightened by the divine power could not escape the forbidden zone in time and could only turn into ashes under the heavenly tribulation. Boom! With a shocking thunder, 8 dazzling lightning beams tore through the dark sky and blasted toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was as calm as ever. He waved his hand and cast a spell to deal with the lightning attacks. The 8 colorful lightning beams were easily defeated and devoured by him. 16 lightning bolts and 32 lightning bolts followed one after another, but the results were the same. After 3 bolts of lightning, the tribulation cloud vortex changed, and its power increased by several times. When the 4th bolt of lightning descended, there were as many as 64 lightning beams, arranged in a heaven and earth divine formation, and mixed with the power of 5 elements. The 5th and 6th bolts of lightning had 128 and 256 bolts of lightning. The densely packed lightning pillars almost filled up the sky within 100 miles, like a rain of arrows shooting down. In the face of such a destructive divine power, Ji Tianqing was not afraid. He waved the burial of heaven and used a supreme sword technique to defeat all the lightning bolts in the sky. The first 6 bolts of lightning were not difficult for him. Not only was it easy for him to resist the lightning attacks, but his movements were also smooth and smooth. Soon, the tribulation cloud vortex turned blood red. The strange and unpredictable mental demon tribulation descended. Ji Tianqing was enveloped by the blood-red light and lost in the mental demon illusion for an hour. Only then did he defeat the mental demon illusion and successfully pass it. The 8th bolt of lightning descended, and the great tribulation of wind and fire arrived as expected. Ji Tianqing's physical body had been tempered to the extreme. Using the great tribulation of wind and fire to temper his Dharma body did not improve much. He simply used all the power of the great tribulation of wind and fire to temper his soul. This process was very slow and very painful. However, he had the wisdom of the former divine king and an unbelievably tenacious will. Of course, he succeeded in tempering his soul. The power of his soul was greatly enhanced. Kaboom! The last bolt of lightning descended. This was the ultimate test of this heavenly tribulation. In the tribulation cloud vortex, a very strange divine lightning struck down. That 10,000 feet long pillar of lightning was actually transparent and formless. It was almost invisible to the naked eye. Only the divine sense could see it clearly. This lightning did not seem to contain any elemental power, but it had an incomparably mysterious and strange power. Ji Tianqing did not pass this kind of heavenly tribulation in his previous life. He was simply baffled. Since ancient times, who has seen invisible divine lightning? Is this still considered divine lightning? When this thought flashed through his mind, the invisible divine lightning had already struck him. Bang! In the deafening loud sound, the invisible divine lightning turned into a ball of transparent brilliance and enveloped him. If one used their divine sense to investigate, they would find that this ball of transparent brilliance was like a water bubble. Ji Tianqing was trapped in the water bubble. His eyes were tightly closed, and his soul was in a deep sleep. His soul consciousness had also entered an indescribable illusory realm. It was a dreamlike space. There were transparent light screens in all directions, flashing with hundreds of images. Every image was related to Ji Tianqing's previous life. For example, back then, Kenshin suppressed the demon emperor with a sword and saved millions of people in the Tianshan region. Chapter 2003. In the dreamlike space, the surroundings were sealed by invisible divine power. This was formless and unfathomable. Those dazzling scenes were all things that had happened in the past, and they were directly or indirectly related to Ji Tianqing. For example, back then, he established a dojo at Tianzhu Mountain and challenged all the martial saints in the world. There had once been a famous martial saint expert who had climbed the mountain with great confidence to challenge the martial saint. In the end, he was defeated by Kenshin after 1 or 2 moves. His reputation was ruined, and he was even seriously injured. Since then, that martial saint's reputation plummeted, and the power of his sect also declined day by day, becoming weaker and weaker. A few hundred years later, this martial saint had passed away, and the sect that he had personally founded had also fallen apart, vanishing into thin air. His descendants remembered this grudge and saw Kenshin and Tianzhu Mountain as mortal enemies. Kenshin had already ascended to the upper realm, and there was no news of him. However, Tianzhu Mountain still existed. Therefore, that martial saint's descendants and disciples took revenge openly and secretly, and they crazily attacked Tianzhu Mountain. Another example was that when Kenshin was in charge of Tianzhu Mountain, he had taken in many talented martial artists. Among them, there was a person who carried a deep grudge and climbed Tianzhu Mountain alone, and he became a disciple of Tianzhu Mountain. However, this person did not do proper work, and he carried a set of jade chess all day long, looking for people to play chess with, and he disturbed other disciples who were practicing their swordsmanship. Later, the Huanglong Taoist wanted to expel this person from the sect. This person knelt in the rainy night for an entire night, begging the Huanglong Taoist to let him stay. Kenshin was moved by compassion, and he personally guided this person. After a few hundred years, this person mastered his divine power and finally became a chess saint. Moreover, this person created a huge organization with tens of millions of disciples, and he saved countless ambitious people. Then, the scene of the bright moon demon emperor following Kenshin appeared in the scene. She chased after Kenshin's footsteps all her life, and she loved him to the extreme, but she did not have a good ending, and finally died in the starry sky. 1,000 years later, she was reincarnated as the princess of the demon imperial court, but she was stranded in a human kingdom, and she followed Ji Tianqing since she was young. Even after reincarnation, she was still infatuated. Ji Tianqing did not know how long he had been in formless. After seeing thousands of scenes and images, he suddenly had an epiphany. Cause of the past, effect of the present. This heavenly tribulation is most likely a karmic tribulation. Understanding this point, his expression was rather solemn as he frowned and fell into deep thought. The chaos was divided into yin and yang, and then there was light and darkness. The power of the five elements gave birth to all things, whether it was the spiritual energy of heaven and earth cultivated by martial artists or the power of stars cultivated by gods, they were all traceable and real. The concept of karma and blessings was illusory and unfathomable. I never expected that the heavenly Tao would actually use this as a tribulation and set up such a test for me. When he was in the upper realm, he had come into contact with the myriad races in the universe and understood the 3,000 great Taos and the myriad races theories. Among them, there were several powerful races and martial arts schools that believed in karma. They used their great divine powers to gain insight into their past lives, present lives, and future lives. They focused on doing good deeds and accumulating blessings, all for the sake of achieving positive results. Ji Tianqing had some understanding of this, but he had never studied it in depth. However, he never expected that the eighth heavenly tribulation from the heavenly Tao would use this as a foundation. This was simply not giving him a way out. In my past life, I also went through 9 tribulations, but they were all traceable heavenly tribulations related to the 5 elements, wind, and thunder. I never thought that the few heavenly tribulations I've gone through in this life would be rarer each time. Especially the reincarnation and karmic tribulations, these are not tribulations that a person should go through. Even the gods of the upper realm may not be able to resolve this kind of power. Ji Tianqing pondered with a solemn expression and sighed faintly. The heavenly Tao is ruthless, fair, and strict. It's most likely that I messed with the heavenly Tao in my past life and left a backup plan in the heavenly tribulation, causing the tribulation in this life to be so bumpy. However, since things have come to this, it's useless to talk about it. I can only try to resolve it. Thus, he began to try to resolve this karmic tribulation. After an entire day, he finally figured it out. A total of 108,000 images and scenes floated and flickered in the formless. Many of the images and scenes were his experiences in his past life and present life, and they were all directly or indirectly related. He tried to use his mind to manipulate a few images and piece them together. There was a direct connection between those images, which clearly showed the process of a certain incident and the final result. As a result, after those images were pieced together, they immediately dissipated. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, and then he came to a realization. I see. He vaguely found a way to resolve the karmic tribulation, and immediately became spirited as he began to piece together the various images in the formless. Time passed silently. One image after another, under the guidance of his mind, quickly pieced together and disappeared. Half a month passed by quickly. More than 90% of the 108,000 images and scenes had disappeared, leaving only slightly more than 8,000 images. In this half a month, in the process of piecing together the images, Ji Tianqing also made up for countless memories. The things that he had experienced in his past life and present life, whether good or evil, right or wrong, he recalled about 90% of them. Only then did he realize that many things were not as simple as they seemed on the surface. It was a simple matter, but the consequences and chain reactions were beyond his imagination. However, as the images continued to decrease, the speed at which he pieced together the images also became slower and slower. Until now, he seemed to be in a deadlock, and his progress was extremely slow. After all, the remaining 8,000 images were all somewhat unfamiliar and messy. He observed and pondered for a long time, but he could not see any necessary connection between these images. He could not rashly try to piece them together, otherwise, he would definitely make a mistake, and when that time came, it might lead to unpredictable consequences. Therefore, he sat in the formless, calmed his mind, and carefully observed the images around him. He fell into deep thought, trying to analyze the scenes in each image, and the possible consequences and effects. This process was very long, and it was mentally and physically exhausting. Another half a month passed. His sea of consciousness had been immersed in thinking, and his thoughts were constantly diverging and deducing, never stopping. Out of the 8,000+ images, another 3,000+ images disappeared. He gained even more insights and insights. He finally understood that only by not being bound by the 7 emotions and 6 desires could he remove the fog and see the essence of things. As a god, looking down on all living beings with cold eyes, without being tainted by karma, he could live forever. His mind and emotions had reached an extremely calm and ethereal state. In this way, he could see the karmic connection between those images. After a full 3 months, all the images in the formless were pieced together by him, and they all disappeared. This mysterious, strange, and difficult karmic tribulation was resolved by him. Swoosh! Chapter 2004. It was dusk. The light between heaven and earth was dim, and the surrounding forest was deathly silent. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky above the ruins as his clothes and hair danced in the wind. He looked calm and emotionless. He looked up at the calamity cloud vortex above his head and his eyes were calm and wise. His aura was also restrained to the extreme, as if he was an ordinary person who did not have any ripples. However, his current state made him seem like an aloof and remote god that looked down on all living things. No one in this world could understand what kind of state it was. It was not a martial arts state but the divine path realm. It was a state that originated from one soul. Swoosh! The calamity cloud vortex in the sky quickly dissipated and turned into a ray of sacred golden light that descended from the sky. Ji Tianqing bathed in the golden light and his physical body and spiritual soul were baptized and strengthened rapidly. After 15 minutes, the sacred golden light gradually disappeared. His strength had also increased by several times and reached an unimaginable level. Phew! In such a short period of time, I have gone through 3 heavenly tribulations. It is so tiring and exhausting. President Ji Tian let out a sigh of relief, revealing a look of relief. Even someone as powerful as him felt exhausted after going through 3 heavenly tribulations. However, this was the will of heaven and even a divine being could not resist it. Unless he hid in the 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower, he would not be tested by the heavenly tribulations. However, he could not hide in the God Tower forever. If he did not go through the 9 heavenly tribulations, he would never reach the martial sage realm. Ji Tianqing glanced at the mountains around him and realized that he had indeed wasted 3 months of his time trying to overcome the tribulation. I have left the pillar of heaven's mountain for more than half a year. I wonder how the situation is on the mountain. He muttered in a low voice and prepared to turn around and leave. However, at this moment, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the sky behind him. Swoosh! Dazzling golden light surged out of the crack, illuminating the heaven and earth within 100 miles. The golden light condensed into a huge palm that covered the sky and slammed down with a suppressive force. Before the huge palm arrived, the terrifying suppressive force had already enveloped Ji Tianqing. He felt as if he was stuck in a quagmire, unable to move an inch. His skin and nerves were stretched taut. It's a martial saint expert. He immediately realized that a martial sage had made a move. The power of that golden palm was enough to threaten his life. At this critical moment, he unhesitatingly took out the sword of burial of heaven and fiercely stabbed at the giant golden palm. The burial of heaven sword burst forth with a golden light that soared into the sky, condensing into a giant sword that was 1,000 feet long. The sword and the palm collided, and an earth-shattering bang burst out. At that moment, a thunderous boom shook the heavens and spread for hundreds of kilometers. The giant golden sword collapsed on the spot, shattering into countless fragments that scattered in all directions. A large hole was also pierced through the giant palm, but its power did not diminish as it slammed into Ji Tianqing. Boom! Ji Tianqing was sent flying away by the gigantic golden palm. His face turned deathly pale as he was sent flying tens of miles away, smashing into a pile of ruins. The 1,000-foot-tall pile of ruins suddenly exploded into pieces, raising a cloud of dust. After a long time, the dust and golden light dissipated. Ji Tianqing flew back into the sky. He did not have time to tidy up his messy hair and clothes. Holding the sword of burial of heaven, he looked toward the north. He saw a purple-robed figure slowly walking out of the darkness. It was a man in a purple robe with a head full of white hair. He was thin and tall, and his eyes were as sharp as swords. However, he was wearing a mask made of purple jade that covered his entire face. Other than his eyes, one could not see his face at all. That purple jade mask was not an ordinary item. It could block the detection of divine sense, preventing others from prying into his true appearance. There was no doubt that the purple-robed man did not want to expose his identity. Ji Tianqing stared at him with a gloomy gaze. After looking him up and down a few times, he vaguely felt that he was somewhat familiar. However, he could not see any clues and could not guess the other party's identity. Thus, he secretly used the 10,000 divine eyes to see the truth. His eyes immediately turned dark gold, releasing a mysterious power as he looked at the purple-robed man. The disguise effect of the purple jade mask was immediately seen through by the 10,000 divine eyes. Ji Tianqing vaguely saw that under the mask was a pale face with a white beard. Unfortunately, the 10,000 divine eyes could not completely see through the disguise of the mask. The face that Ji Tianqing saw was also somewhat blurry and distorted. He could not recognize who it was at all. The purple-robed man looked at him sharply and said in a low and hoarse voice, "Ji Tianqing, don't waste your energy. This Emperor's void mask is not something you can see through." Ji Tianqing could naturally tell that this person's voice was fake. He frowned and asked in a cold tone, "You know me? And you can find me so accurately in this vast ruins of God. You want to kill me, but you wear a mask to hide your identity. This means that I know you, or at least I've seen you before." The purple-robed man's reaction was still calm, without the slightest ripple. He said in a low voice, "You are from Tianzhu Mountain, and you claim to be the successor of Kenshin. It is difficult for the powerhouses of the major forces not to know you. As for this Emperor's identity, you don't have to guess anymore. There will never be an answer. Because you don't know this Emperor, nor have you seen this Emperor." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and sneered, "Oh. So, we have no enmity?" The purple-robed man shook his head calmly and said in an indifferent tone, "Of course not. Kenshin defeated so many powerhouses and killed so many people in his life. I don't know how many powerhouses' families were destroyed because of him, and how many forces declined and were destroyed because of him. Kenshin has fallen, and we have no way to take revenge. We can only blame this on Tianzhu Mountain. You are the successor of Kenshin, the successor of Tianzhu Mountain. If this emperor doesn't kill you, who will I kill? Ji Tianqing knew very well that this person's words were half true and half false and could not be trusted completely. However, he did not probe further and continued to ask, "The ruins of God is so big, and I moved alone. How did you know my whereabouts?" A hint of contempt flashed through the purple-robed man's eyes as he sneered, "Of course, I have to thank your arrogance and arrogance. After the Yin-Yang secret realm appeared, you fought an intense battle with the Broken Sky Alliance. Many powerhouses saw it with their own eyes and it spread a few months ago. Although you didn't say your name, your characteristics are so obvious that those who know you can naturally guess that it's you. What's even more laughable is that this emperor searched for you in the ruins of God for 3 months and it was originally very difficult to find you. I didn't expect that you would undergo the tribulation here and cause such a huge commotion that could be seen clearly from 1,000 miles away. You're clearly courting death." Ji Tianqing came to a realization and was secretly on guard. Back then, I dominated my generation and offended countless powerhouses and powerhouses. Even now, there are still countless powerhouses eyeing my inheritance and the mystery of ascension. There are also many powerhouses and powerhouses eyeing Tianzhu Mountain covetously. I have to be more careful in the future. Chapter 2005. The purple-robed man placed his hands behind his back and stood proudly in the night sky. He looked down at Ji Tianqing from above and exuded a powerful and domineering aura. A formless aura spread out in all directions and covered a radius of a few hundred miles. Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that the purple-robed man's strength had reached an unfathomable level. Although the purple-robed man was a martial sage like Tian Slayer of the Broken Sky Alliance and Ji Xiolua of the North Underworld Mountain. However, there were differences in strength between the martial sages and their cultivation realms. There were 9 levels of the martial sage realm. Tian Slayer's cultivation realm was around the 2nd level of the martial sage realm. Ji Xiolua was a 3rd level of the martial sage realm. The purple-robed man was at least a 6th level of the martial sage realm. It was no exaggeration to say that even if Tian Slayer and Ji Xiolua worked together, they would not be a match for the purple-robed man. Ji Tianqing understood this point and thought to himself that he could not fight the purple-robed man head-on. He had to outsmart him. At that moment, the purple-robed man spoke again. "Ji Tianqing, are you thinking of your last words? There's no need for that. If you have any last words, just keep them to yourself. You can go and die now." With that, the purple-robed man waved his hand and shot out a golden light that covered the heavens and earth. Instantly, an incomparably violent force enveloped the area within a radius of a few hundred miles. The surrounding 10,000 feet tall mountains were uprooted and quickly shrunk in the golden light. In the blink of an eye, the 10 over mountains shrunk to 100 feet tall and turned into balls of golden light that shot towards Ji Tianqing. With a wave of his hand, the purple-robed man could command the mountains and turn everything in the universe into his power. Only experts of the 6th level of the martial sage realm and above could use such a technique. Ji Tianqing did not dare to be careless and quickly waved the Burial of Heaven sword to display his sword skills. Big Dipper sword. He stabbed out with his right hand and instantly shot out 49 rays of golden light that hit the 10 over balls of golden light. Boom! 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 A series of muffled sounds burst out. The sword light and the golden hilt shattered with a bang, turning into an endless amount of fine powder that covered the night sky. Violent shockwaves spread in all directions and Ji Tianqing was sent flying a few miles away. The ground in a radius of 200 miles was also flattened by the shockwaves and turned into ruins. After Ji Tianqing landed on the ground, he flew back into the sky without hesitation and attacked again with his sword. Seeing this scene, the purple-robed man raised his white eyebrows, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. "Bastard, I haven't seen you in 2 years. This is not possible. The purple-robed man was filled with shock. This thought flashed through his mind, and he found it unbelievable. No, I must get rid of him today. If I let him grow, he will be a big threat in the future. The purple-robed man's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He waved his hand again. Meteor of destruction. He raised his wide sleeves and waved his palms. He formed a profound technique and formed dozens of ancient and mysterious seals. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 99 seals filled the night sky and emitted a bright golden light. Suddenly, 99 silver light spots lit up in the distant sky and rapidly descended. In just 2 breaths, the 99 light spots arrived above the mountain range and turned into giant meteors. Each meteor was as big as a mountain and burned with the fire of the stars. It released a destructive power and blasted toward Tianqing. Everything within 1,000 miles was illuminated by the fire of the stars. This area was sealed by the divine power of the stars and was about to be destroyed. Tianqing was fearless. He waved his hand and cast a spell. Star Attraction Spell. He formed a spell with his left hand and waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand. It released silver light and formed a giant starlight vortex. Boom, 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 boom. The 99 meteors bombarded the starlight vortex one after another and were all swallowed up by the vortex. Tianqing used a secret spell to swallow the meteors and the divine fire of the stars. Of course, his cultivation level was not high enough. He could not swallow 99 meteors in the blink of an eye. He could only borrow the power of the heaven-mending orb to help him swallow the meteors. Even so, his speed was still too slow. He only had time to swallow 92 meteors before he reached his limit. The remaining 7 meteors shattered the starlight vortex on the spot and smashed into him. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering sound exploded and spread over 1,000 miles. 3 craters with a radius of dozens of miles were blasted out of the ground that looked like ruins. The ground within 1,000 miles shook crazily as if there was a huge earthquake. Mountains collapsed and the ground cracked. Spiderweb-like cracks appeared. What an apocalyptic scene! When a martial sage was angry, 1,000 miles would be overturned. Tianqing was blasted deep into the ground. His hair was disheveled and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He used his power to shake off the soil around him. With a low roar, he flew out of the crater. In the sky, the purple-robed man witnessed the entire process. He was so shocked that his body trembled and his eyes were filled with horror. How is this possible? He is only in the crossing calamity realm. How can he control the power of the stars and swallow more than 90 meteors? The purple-robed man's strength had reached the peak of the martial sage realm. Among the many martial sages in the world, he was ranked in the top few. He was one of the top powers who was closest to the martial god realm. Due to a special opportunity, he had cultivated a secret spell to trigger the meteors. However, he had not truly mastered the power of the stars. He had only learned a little. However, Tianqing's performance was like a martial god realm top power. He could swallow and dissolve the power of the stars. This was an unprecedented demon. If the purple-robed man had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that it was true. D*MN starred. How did he do it? In the entire Shinwu continent, there are no more than 10 people who can use the power of the stars. They are either peerless martial gods or top martial sages. He is only in the crossing calamity realm, but he can control the stars. He must have inherited the power of Kenshin and cultivated the secret spell to control the stars. Thinking of this, the purple-robed man became excited. His eyes were filled with greed. If that's the case, then the secret spell to control the stars belongs to me. Ever since he understood the mystery of the power of the stars and knew that it was the source of power to reach the martial god realm, he was determined to control the power of the stars. Unfortunately, the secret spell to cultivate the power of the stars was only in the hands of the three martial gods. He was not qualified to obtain it. It was impossible for him to cultivate it. Ji Tianqing could control the stars. To him, this was a great surprise. "I want Kenshin's secret spell," the purple-robed man shouted. In a flash, he rushed toward Ji Tianqing and raised his hands to grab him. Chapter 2006. The purple-robed man shouted angrily. Dozens of cracks appeared in the dark night sky and a black void windstorm surged out. Swoosh! Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the powerful void windstorm condensed into two huge palms and grabbed at Ji Tianqing from both sides. Ji Tianqing knew the power of this skill and did not dare to face it head-on. He could only try his best to avoid it. However, the space within a 100-mile radius was sealed by an invisible force. He felt as though he was in a quagmire and could not move. Before he could fly far, he was caught by the huge black palms. The incomparably fierce void storm ruthlessly twisted his body, cutting his body until it was covered in cuts and bruises, and blood flowed out of his body. Fortunately, his physical body was strong enough and he used a protective secret skill in time to block the power of the void windstorm. If it was anyone else, they would have been torn to pieces by the void windstorm. However, Ji Tianqing's crisis was not over. Seeing that the void windstorm did not tear him apart, the purple-robed man shook his hands and released an invisible force. The two void palms were instantly detonated, causing black clouds to explode in the night sky, creating a deafening explosion. Bang! 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 The deafening sound reverberated for 1,000 miles. The violent shockwaves caused the sky and earth to shake violently. Dense cracks appeared on the ground, extending for 200 to 300 miles in all directions. Ji Tianqing was severely injured and his body twisted and folded strangely. Numerous wounds appeared on his body and blood gushed out. He looked like a ball of paper that had been crumpled into a ball and thrown 100 miles away in the night sky. Finally, he smashed into the ruins. Plop! After he landed on the ground, a deep pit was formed in the ruins and dust filled the sky. Ji Tianqing was covered in blood and curled up in a ball at the bottom of the deep pit. Half of his body was buried in the mud. The terrifying power of the void explosion had not only injured his body but also his spiritual soul. At this moment, he was sure that the purple-robed man's strength was not as simple as a rank 6 martial sage. He was at least a rank 8 martial sage. Ji Tianqing was only at the 8th level of the tribulation passing realm while his opponent was at the 8th level of the martial sage realm. There was a difference of a whole realm between the two, so how could they be mentioned in the same breath? No matter how monstrous Ji Tianqing was, there was no way he could withstand it. The only thing he could do now was to think of a way to escape. Fighting to the death despite knowing that you were outmatched wasn't bravery, but stupidity. At this moment, the purple-robed man strode across the night sky and rushed over with a murderous aura. Ji Tianqing, it's time for you to die. The purple-robed man let out a deep growl, looking down at Ji Tianqing from a high position. He then waved his hand and sent out a faint blue flame. Soul-breaking water. The earth-shattering blue flames were like a waterfall, pouring down from the sky and about to drown Ji Tianqing. Before the blue flames arrived, Ji Tianqing had already sensed the extreme coldness and tearing in his soul. He didn't doubt that this kind of blue flame was specifically used to deal with the soul. Once he was hit, even if he didn't die, his soul would be severely injured. He might even faint on the spot. At this critical moment, he could only pull himself together and fight back with all his might. Heavenly Dragon Palm. Ji Tianqing let out a low growl, releasing a vast amount of dermic powers and fiercely sent out 2 palms. The star divine fire spurted out from his palms, forming 2,000 feet long silver divine dragons that attacked the blue waterfall. Bang bang! The heavenly dragon formed by the power of the stars collided with the blue flames, creating a deafening sound. The two silver heavenly dragons shattered on the spot, exploding into billions of silver light fragments, which were quickly swallowed by the blue flames. However, the waterfall formed by the blue flames was also torn apart and its power was greatly reduced. The waterfall was about to reach Ji Tianqing's head and was about to drown him. Ji Tianqing's body emitted golden flames and immediately merged with the Burial of Heaven sword. Black Tortoise Sacred Sword. Ji Tianqing merged with the Heaven Burial sword and turned into a giant sword that was thousands of feet tall and shone with golden light. The giant sword was like a divine dragon, coiled up and connected head and tail. Within the golden light, a giant tortoise-shaped beast that was as large as a mountain and had a majestic appearance appeared. It was the black tortoise of the four sacred beasts. For many years, Ji Tianqing had used the white tiger sacred sword, the vermilion bird sacred sword, and the azure dragon sacred sword, but he had never used the black tortoise sacred sword. This secret technique was the strongest defensive technique of the four sacred beasts. Unless it was absolutely necessary, why would Ji Tianqing use it? Bang bang bang. In the next moment, the blue waterfall that blotted out the sky hit the Heaven Burial sword and Ji Tianqing with a loud bang. The blue icy brilliance quickly swallowed the golden light and drowned the shadow of the black tortoise. Even the 1,000-foot-long golden sword was swallowed up by the icy blue light and disappeared without a trace. Soon, the golden light and the giant sword were both covered, leaving only the blue brilliance in the night sky. The purple-robed man stood in the night sky and looked at this scene with a ferocious expression. He sneered proudly. "Humph. It's too easy for you to kill you like this. I will seize your soul and memory and obtain Kenshin's inheritance and secrets. The next martial god realm expert will be me." As he spoke, the purple-robed man clenched his fists proudly, his eyes shining with hope. After a few breaths, the blue brilliance became weaker and was about to dissipate. The purple-robed man collected his thoughts and looked down. He thought that the Burial of Heaven sword must have been severely damaged. Ji Tianqing's soul had also been destroyed and he died on the spot. However, when he saw the scene in front of him clearly, he was stunned. The giant golden sword was still trying its best to hold on. Even though the shadow of the black tortoise was mostly destroyed and only had 4 legs and a tail left, it was still resisting the corrosion of the blue brilliance. The purple-robed man could clearly sense that Ji Tianqing's aura was still in the giant sword. This little bastard is indeed monstrous. He actually blocked my ultimate skill. The purple-robed man was stunned for a moment. Then, he slowly raised his right palm and gathered the power of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles and slammed it down. Heaven-shaking palm. The endless power of heaven and earth condensed into a giant 5-colored palm and slammed down like a mountain. The purple-robed man believed that Ji Tianqing and the Burial of Heaven sword were at the end of their tether and would definitely not be able to withstand his palm. However, at this moment, Ji Tianqing's figure flew out of the Burial of Heaven sword. His face was pale and his body was covered in blood. However, he looked up at the sky unyieldingly and his eyes were filled with a determined cold light. He raised his left palm and released a turbulent golden flame. It condensed into a golden spear shadow that was hundreds of feet long and blasted toward the purple-robed man. God-slaying spear. The power of the golden spear was comparable to an attack from a deity and could pierce through everything. Kaboom! In the next moment, the god-slaying spear shattered the giant 5-colored palm and stabbed toward the purple-robed man with undiminished power. The purple-robed man did not expect Ji Tianqing to have the strength to counterattack and release such a miraculous ultimate skill. Bang! Chapter 2007. The purple-robed man had underestimated his enemy and was hit by the god-slaying spear. But he was an 8th-degree martial saint after all and had reached the peak of martial arts. His power was terrifying. At the critical moment, he dodged sideways in time and avoided the god-slaying spear's sharp edge. Therefore, his body was never pierced by the god-slaying spear. The god-slaying spear brushed past his left shoulder and severed his left arm on the spot. The severed arm fell to the night sky and spurted out a mouthful of pale golden blood. The heart-wrenching pain caused the purple-robed man to tremble and break out in cold sweat. He gave a painful groan and staggered back 1,000 feet before he dissipated the impact of the god-slaying spear. At the same time, Ji Tianqing controlled the Sword of Burial of Heaven and took the opportunity to escape into the distance. Swoosh! He merged with the Sword of Burial of Heaven and turned into a ray of golden flowing light. Like lightning, he cut across the night sky and flew 100 miles away in the blink of an eye. When the purple-robed man regained his senses, he flew into a rage and started to chase after him. Ji Tianqing, you despicable beast! You still want to escape? Wishful thinking! He shouted angrily and his eyes turned ferocious with murderous intent. Swoosh! White light burst forth from his body, and his feet moved in a mysterious way. With each step, he could travel 100 miles. In just 20 breaths, both parties had flown 1,000 miles away. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing was caught up by the purple-robed man. After all, his flying speed could not be compared with the purple-robed man's. Little beast, where are you going? The purple-robed man yelled as he waved his palms and shot out 2 giant golden palms towards Ji Tianqing, who was 10 miles away. Ji Tianqing merged with the Sword of Burial of Heaven and exerted force with the Burial of Heaven at the same time. Instantly, the power exploded to the maximum. Swoosh! The speed of the Sword of Burial of Heaven increased by 3 times and accelerated forward. In the blink of an eye, the Sword of Burial of Heaven flew 100 miles away. The 2 giant golden palms missed their target and slammed into a huge mountain below with a loud bang. The mountain peak that was thousands of feet tall was smashed into ruins on the spot, causing smoke and dust to fill the sky. Damn it! The purple-robed man cursed angrily and sped up to catch up. The Sword of Burial of Heaven flew for over 1,000 miles in one breath, then gradually slowed down. Ji Tianqing and Burial of Heaven unleashed their maximum power at the same time. After all, they couldn't hold on for too long. Not long after, the purple-robed man caught up with Ji Tianqing. This time, the purple-robed man didn't repeat the same mistake. When he was still 10 miles away from the Sword of Burial of Heaven, he waved his palm and shot out a dozen cold beams. Swish! Swish! Each ray of cold light was a chopstick-length soul-extinguishing nail. It was a very insidious hidden weapon. Based on the purple-robed man's methods, he shouldn't have ended up like this. He could cast an earth-shattering spell, and use its mysterious power to completely crush Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing's speed was too fast. He couldn't make it in time. As long as he could delay Ji Tianqing and slow him down a little, he had absolute confidence that he could make Ji Tianqing stay. The dozen cold beams formed a formation and surrounded the Sword of Burial of Heaven. They were about to shoot down the Sword of Burial of Heaven. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing decisively put away the Sword of Burial of Heaven and used the teleportation mystic technique. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, he and the Sword of Burial of Heaven disappeared at the same time. The next moment, the dozen cold beams passed through the white light and stabbed into a huge mountain below. Boom! 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 The huge mountain was blasted with dozens of holes and cracks. It collapsed on the spot. At the same time, Ji Tianqing had already crossed 1,000 miles and appeared in the sky 1,000 miles away. He continued to fly without looking back and fled to the south with all his strength. The purple-robed man was stunned for a moment. Seeing Ji Tianqing escape by teleportation, he immediately grinned coldly. He. Teleportation? What's the use of that? Since I've already made my move, I definitely won't let you leave the ruins of God alive. As soon as he finished speaking, the purple-robed man sped up and strode across the sky, chasing toward the south. About 2 hours later, the purple-robed man caught up with Ji Tianqing again. He then used his secret technique in an attempt to capture Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing had no choice but to use all his strength and all kinds of trump cards to deal with him. In the end, he escaped with minor injuries and escaped the purple-robed man's pursuit. However, the purple-robed man was determined to kill him. How could he let him escape? Both parties started a chase in the ruins of God and rushed to the south at an extremely fast speed. A day later, both parties chased for 200,000 miles. This was already Ji Tianqing's limit. He was already heavily injured, and after a series of battles and fleeing, his magic power had long been depleted. At this time, he was truly an arrow at the end of its flight. However, the purple-robed man's aura was long and drawn out, as if he would never tire. When he caught up with Ji Tianqing again, Ji Tianqing was in complete despair. He had no other choice, and there was nowhere to hide. Even the sword of burial of heaven could not help him escape. He could only join forces with him to fight the purple-robed man to the death. Whoosh! The purple-robed man's figure flashed and blocked Ji Tianqing's path. Ji Tianqing could only stop and stand in the sky with a pale face. He held on to the sword of burial of heaven and panted violently. The purple-robed man saw Lu Yin's sorry state and detected that Lu Yin's aura was chaotic and his magic power was extremely weak. A mocking expression appeared on his face. "Kid, you were able to escape from me a few times and survive until now. It's truly a miracle. Even I can't help but admire you. You're indeed a rare genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. In the future, there will definitely be a place for you in Shenwu Continent's war god position. It's a pity that you were born at the wrong time to meet me. Don't make any more pointless struggles. Give up resisting, and I'll give you a dignified death." The purple-robed man placed his hands behind his back and stood proudly. His entire body exuded a powerful confidence and domineering aura. Although Ji Tianqing was in a sorry state, his expression remained calm. His eyes were indifferent as he said, "There's an entire realm of difference between our strength, so it's normal that I'm not your opponent. You're a peak martial saint, but you still can't kill me. This is your humiliation. Furthermore, your confidence and arrogance are laughable in my eyes. Even if I'm at the end of my rope, do you really think that you can kill me?" The purple-robed man frowned and sneered mockingly, "He. I really can't think of a way for you to escape. In your current state, you can't even use a complete secret technique, can you? I only need one palm to blast you into smithereens." Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly and sneered, "If you can't think of a way, then it only proves that your knowledge is too shallow. Not only can you not do anything to me, but you will also die under my sword soon. When I break through to the martial saint realm, it will be the day of your death." When the purple-robed man heard this, he immediately began to laugh maniacally. "Ha ha 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 ha, this is the biggest joke in the world. It's too laughable." Ji Tianqing ignored him and secretly activated the small golden pagoda in his mind, releasing a mysterious golden light. Whoosh! A layer of sacred golden light immediately enveloped Ji Tianqing. Chapter 2008. Seeing Ji Tianqing disappear again, the purple-robed man sneered disdainfully. He, damned little bastard, are you trying to teleport away again? I've already said that I will never let you leave the ruins of God alive." As soon as he finished speaking, the purple-robed man released an invisible divine sense and extended it in all directions. After 2 breaths, his divine sense had covered a radius of 3,000 miles. Within this range, hundreds of mountains and dozens of rivers, billions of trees and flowers were all covered by his divine sense. From the big demons and giant beasts to the small flowers and birds, nothing could escape his perception. Previously, when Ji Tianqing teleported 1,000 miles away, he could not escape the lock of his divine sense. Because of this, he could follow Ji Tianqing closely and not be shaken off. Now, he thought that the result would not change. It was impossible for Ji Tianqing to escape from his grasp. However, after the purple-robed man's divine sense had scanned a radius of 3,000 miles, he could not find any trace of Ji Tianqing. He was stunned and frowned in confusion. He muttered to himself, Where did that kid go? Is he invisible? Even if he is invisible, I can still find your aura. Therefore, the purple-robed man used his divine sense again and carefully scanned a radius of 3,000 miles. The result shocked him even more. He could not find Ji Tianqing's aura. Ji Tianqing was not within the radius of 3,000 miles at all. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air and evaporated into thin air. How can this be? How is this possible? The purple-robed man was a little dumbfounded and muttered in disbelief. He teleported a few times before, and each time, he could only teleport 1,000 miles away. That was his limit. He can't be more than 3,000 miles away from my divine sense. What the hell, where did he escape to? The purple-robed man was unwilling to accept the fact that the cooked duck had flown away. He was so angry that his killing intent surged. He did not believe it and personally searched a radius of 3,000 miles, even using all kinds of secret techniques. After tossing and turning for 2 hours, he still came up empty-handed. He had completely lost track of Ji Tianqing. He had no choice but to suppress his anger and continue flying south. Humph. That little bastard indeed has some tricks up his sleeve. He actually managed to escape right under the nose of this emperor. However, no matter how many tricks you have up your sleeve, I will never let you off. No matter what, he had to leave the ruins of God and escape back to the Pillar of Heaven mountain. He had to go from north to south, through the entire ruins of God, and leave from the vicinity of Blackwind Cliff. I will be waiting for him near Blackwind Cliff. I don't believe that he won't come. The purple-robed man sneered after he made up his mind. Then, he flew towards the south at lightning speed, and soon disappeared into the horizon. Meanwhile, in the 5th level of the 9 heavens 10 extremities, Ji Tianqing was sitting cross-legged on the altar, quietly circulating his energy to heal his injuries. Beneath him was the Origin Divine Formation, and around him were 18 Yao God statues. There were thousands of shining stars above his head, sprinkling down bright starlight that enveloped his body. He took a healing elixir, and with the help of the immense power of the stars, he quickly healed the wounds on his body. As for the injuries to his divine soul, he could only slowly recuperate. There was no way he could recover quickly. Earlier, when the purple-robed man was pursuing him, he was already in a hopeless situation and would die for sure. At the critical moment, he took out the small golden pagoda. That exquisite small pagoda was the incarnation of the 9 heavens 10 extremities pagoda, and also the secret key to enter and exit the pagoda. It was this small pagoda that saved Ji Tianqing, allowing him to disappear into thin air and enter the 9 heavens 10 extremities pagoda hundreds of thousands of miles away. This was equivalent to teleporting hundreds of thousands of miles. Even a martial god expert could not do it. The purple-robed man would never have thought that Ji Tianqing actually had such a trump card. The entrance to the yin-yang mystic realm had already disappeared. Other than Ji Tianqing, no one could enter the mystic realm, and no one could find the 9 heavens 10 extremities pagoda. Ji Tianqing was absolutely safe hiding in the 9 heavens 10 extremities pagoda. Not to mention the purple-robed man, even a martial god could not do anything to him. After all, the 9 heavens 10 extremities pagoda could even block the will of heaven, so what was a mere martial god? The only thing that made Ji Tianqing feel a little regretful was that he had finally left the pagoda and traveled hundreds of thousands of miles. In order to escape, he instantly returned to the 9 heavens 10 extremities pagoda. His previous journey had been in vain. Of course, compared to the danger to his life, this was nothing at all. Time passed silently. Unknowingly, half a month had passed. Ji Tianqing quietly recuperated for 15 days before his injuries were healed. Previously, his body was twisted like a ball of crumpled paper, and his internal organs and bones were all deformed. After half a month of treatment, coupled with his strong recovery ability, his physical injuries were finally healed. The injuries to his divine soul had also recovered by 70%, and it was no longer a problem. His strength had also returned to normal, and his essence, chi, and spirit were more vigorous. As long as he did not encounter a peak martial sage like the purple-robed man, there was basically not much danger. Half a month has passed, that purple-robed man must have left the ruins of God. If I come out now, he will definitely not be able to find me. Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation and muttered in an indifferent tone. The voice of the burial of heaven sounded in his mind, and said in a complicated tone, he has already lost track of you. The ruins of God is so big, if he can still meet you, how unlucky will you be? According to my estimation, that is a 1 in 10,000 chance, right? Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said coldly, there are many martial sages in the divine martial continent, at least 1 to 200 people. However, there are only 3 to 5 peak martial sages who can reach the 8th stage realm. That purple-robed man's aura somehow feels familiar, I will be able to find out his identity very soon. The burial of heaven was silent for a moment before he consoled him, compared to the storms and dangers we experienced back then, this matter is nothing. Actually, you already have the answer in your heart, but you are not sure. So what if you know that person's identity now? You still can't fight him head-on and take your revenge. The most important thing now is for you to break through to the martial sage realm as soon as possible, then you will be qualified to fight him. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, there are many things that I cannot do before I reach the martial sage realm. I can't refine that star core, can't restore the prestige of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, can't kill the purple-robed man for revenge, and can't enter the North Underworld mountain. Let's go back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and cultivate in seclusion for a period of time, and strive to break through to the martial sage realm within half a year. After saying that, Ji Tianqing took out the golden pagoda and communicated with it with his divine sense. The golden pagoda released a sacred golden light and condensed into a light door in front of him. He stepped into the light door and his figure immediately disappeared. Swoosh! In the next moment, he appeared outside the yin-yang mystic realm, on the peak of a mountain. It was dusk now, and the orange sunset was about to fall into the sky. The peak of the mountain was bleak. Ji Tianqing looked around and saw that the surroundings were peaceful and there was nothing unusual. Therefore, he stepped into the sky and flew towards the south as fast as a ray of light. Chapter 2009. Although things were as Ji Tianqing had expected, everything was fine. The purple-robed man did not appear again, as if he had given up on the pursuit. However, he was cautious and would not be careless. When he was about to leave the ruins of God, he chose to take a detour and avoid the Black Wind Cliff. The reason was self-evident. Everyone knew that when he left the ruins of God and returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, he would definitely pass by the Black Wind Cliff. The purple-robed man most likely also knew that there was a possibility that he would fall into the trap at the Black Wind Cliff. Since that was the case, Ji Tianqing naturally had to take precautions early. He would rather spend a few more hours and take a detour of tens of thousands of miles. After successfully leaving the ruins of God, he was like a bird flying in the sky and a fish leaping in the sea, soaring freely. 20 days later, Ji Tianqing crossed thousands of mountains and rivers and returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. When he arrived at the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, it was early in the morning and the sun was rising. Looking from afar, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain was bathed in the morning light and surrounded by colorful spirit energy. There were flocks of birds and spirit cranes flying in the sky. At the foot of the mountain, there was a large river that flowed like a jade belt. Halfway up the mountain, it was shrouded in colorful auspicious clouds. There were also a few young martial artists who had traveled far and wide to climb the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. They carried dreams and expectations, wanting to climb the Pillar of Heaven's mountain to become a disciple of a master. After not returning for more than half a year, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain was clearly more prosperous. Ji Tianqing was gratified as he passed through the colorful auspicious clouds and landed on the training ground at the peak of the mountain. On the vast training ground, there were many disciples practicing swordsmanship. Ji Tianqing glanced at them and saw that they were all new disciples. There were more than 300 of them. He quietly crossed the training ground and returned to his residence in the Pillar of Heaven's palace. After entering the secret room, he ordered Ji Bai to send a message and summon the Huanglong Daoist for an audience. Ji Bai hurriedly turned around and left to carry out his mission. Ji Tianqing sat in the secret room and closed his eyes to rest for a moment. The Huanglong Daoist quickly arrived. Disciple greets Master. Welcome back to the palace, Master. Huanglong Daoist quickly walked into the secret chamber with a joyful expression and bowed respectfully. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said calmly, "Get up." Huanglong Daoist straightened his body and said, "Master, you went to the ruins of God for more than half a year." This disciple was very worried. "Fortunately, you finally returned safely." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said with an indifferent expression, "Master did indeed encounter some trouble in the ruins of God. There were many episodes. However, I've already resolved it. There's nothing to worry about. However, I have been worried about the situation at Pillar of Heaven's mountains." Huanglong Daoist cupped his hands in greeting and hurriedly reported, "Master, please be at ease. With this disciple guarding Tianzhu Mountain, there is nothing to worry about. For the past half a year, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain situation had been very good, and it was rapidly recovering. The disciples' cultivation resources were doubled, and they were able to receive guidance from the elders and deacons. Their enthusiasm for cultivation was high, and their strength had increased exponentially. The Pillar of Heaven's mountain's reputation had spread, intimidating the 9 sects, 18 factions, and hundreds of cities. Hundreds of millions of people gradually became loyal. Almost every day, there were young martial artists from all over the world rushing to Pillar of Heaven's mountains to participate in the assessment and enter the sect. This disciple followed your instructions and relaxed the requirements to accept disciples. We have also recruited more than 500 outer disciples and more than 1,000 odd job disciples. Speaking of the changes in the situation at Pillar of Heaven's mountains, Huanglong Daoist was filled with gratification, and his eyes were filled with hope and expectation. Ji Tianqing was very satisfied with this and nodded, "That's good. With you in charge of the sect's affairs, Master can be at ease." "Oh right, the disciples' cultivation resources have been doubled, and the sect has recruited so many new disciples. Is the cultivation resources in the treasury enough?" When this question was raised, Huanglong Daoist was startled for a moment. He looked hesitant and his eyes dimmed. "To be honest, Master, the sect is now unable to make ends meet. The cultivation resources in the treasury are decreasing rapidly, and we are already struggling to make ends meet. Fortunately, the sect has the support of the divine array, which gathers the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within 1,000,000 miles. Currently, it is still able to satisfy the disciples' cultivation needs. Moreover, I have also sent out a few elders and deacons to try their best to open up a place with precious resources." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said solemnly, "I will solve this problem as soon as possible. You can continue with the previous plan." After that, he took out a large amount of cultivation resources from the spatial ring and handed them to Huanglong Daoist for safekeeping to support the sect's operations. This batch of cultivation resources was worth a few 100 million spiritual stones. It was enough to support Pillar of Heaven's mountains for another 2 years. Ji Tianqing secretly made up his mind to think of a way to get more cultivation resources as soon as possible. Pillar of Heaven's mountains had finally recovered its vitality and was improving. If the lack of resources led to the stagnation of development, it would be a pity. Ji Tianqing asked again, "Huanglong, how is the reward mission that I issued going?" Huanglong Daoist respectfully reported, "Master, in the past half a year, there have been very few demons that have invaded the sect's territory, and they have not caused any disasters. In the past half a year, the martial artists from various sects and cities have only captured a dozen demons and killed more than 20. But those demons were just insignificant characters, not worth mentioning. I have already followed the rules and given out rewards to those martial artists who have contributed. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, the war between North Underworld Mountain and Luoshui Divine Kingdom has reached its most intense moment. Of course, they will not have the time to invade Pillar of Heaven's mountains. If they continue to be in a stalemate, it will give the sect a chance to breathe and recover as soon as possible. After that, Ji Tianqing asked Huang Long a few more things. Huang Long answered one by one and reported the situation in detail. After an hour, the master and disciple finished their discussion. Huang Long bowed and left the secret chamber. After Huang Long left, Ji Tianqing sat alone in the secret chamber and pondered for a while. He suddenly thought of something and hurriedly took out the sword of burial of heaven and entered the sword's world. Whoosh! In a flash of light, he appeared in the sky above peaceful Earth City. The flourishing peaceful Soil City was now more than twice as large as it had been before. The number of Earth Spirit commoners had also doubled, reaching around 10,000 people. However, when Ji Tianqing looked down at peaceful Earth City, he found that the city was a little messy. Many Earth Spirit citizens were repairing the damaged buildings and streets. The ground outside peaceful Earth City was covered in traces of battle, and there were still cracks in the ground. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing frowned and summoned the Golden Mountain King with his divine sense. The Golden Mountain King carried his dark golden warhammer and rushed over like a streak of light. This king greets the young master. What orders do you have for me today? Ji Tianqing pointed at peaceful Earth City and asked, Golden Mountain King, what happened in the city? Why is it like this? The Golden Mountain King showed a bitter smile. After a moment of hesitation, he explained, Young master, didn't you get a blue Kuan and throw it here? That blue Kuan was very angry and caused a ruckus in the city for a long time. It even fought with the Xitigarbha divine armor many times. Chapter 2010. When Ji Tianqing left the divine pagoda, he took Lan Kuan with him. He had nowhere to put Lan Kuan, so he threw it into the sword world. After that, he was intercepted by the purple-robed man and had no time to care about this matter. Now, he finally remembered Lan Kuan. He didn't expect that Lan Kuan had already caused trouble and harmed peaceful Earth City. Lan Kuan's strength was extraordinary. It had already reached the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Fortunately, the Xitigarbha divine armor protected peaceful Earth City and could resist Lan Kuan's attacks and destruction. However, the Xitigarbha divine armor's strength was only at the 6th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. It could only resist Lan Kuan's attacks and destruction, but it couldn't defeat Lan Kuan. After the Jinshan King reported the matter to Ji Tianqing, he said with a bitter face, Young master, that Lan Kuan doesn't have the intention to kill. It's just complaining and throwing a tantrum. However, our peaceful Earth City can't withstand its continuous torment. That fellow hides in the lake and comes to cause trouble every few days. This king and the Xitigarbha divine armor can't do anything to it. Our people have been on tenterhooks all this time. Young master, you should go take a look. It's best if you can make that Lan Kuan behave. Ji Tianqing nodded and comforted, Jinshan King, don't worry. I'll go find it now. With that, he turned and left peaceful Earth City, flying toward the east. The current sword world was several times larger than before. It had already reached a radius of 500,000 kilometers. To the east of peaceful Earth City was a continuous mountain range and forest. After flying for hundreds of thousands of kilometers, Ji Tianqing discovered a huge lake among the mountains. It was a huge lake with a radius of 500 kilometers. The surface of the lake was sparkling and filled with spiritual energy. Billions of fish, prawns, and many water-type demon beasts lived in the lake. The Lan Kuan, which was thousands of feet long, lay quietly at the bottom of the lake. Half of its body was buried by pebbles and sand. It seemed to be tired and was lying at the bottom of the lake, taking a nap. Its huge mouth was slightly open as it breathed lightly. The fish and prawns that swam past it would be sucked into its bloody mouth and become its food. Ji Tianqing was infuriated when he saw how leisurely and contented it was. Shua! Ji Tianqing stood on the surface of the lake and looked down at Lan Kuan at the bottom of the lake. He sneered and said in a playful tone, "I thought you wanted to leave this place. Now it seems that you are quite comfortable." Lan Kuan, who was currently dozing off, was immediately startled awake and hurriedly opened his big eyes. It suddenly floated out of the water, creating a huge wave that was 10 feet high. It stared at Ji Tianqing with its eyes wide open and said angrily, "You bastard! Liar! You despicable bastard, how dare you come and see me?" Probably because it was too angry, its big nostrils kept spraying out water like a fountain. Ji Tianqing was so angry that he laughed and asked in a playful tone, "Why wouldn't I dare to see you? I brought you away from the deity sea and settled you in this paradise to help you. Not only are you not grateful to me, but you also hate me so much that you even attacked my people. You are ungrateful, biting the hand that feeds you." Lan Kuan was stunned for a moment. It wanted to refute, but it opened its mouth and could not say a word. It could only change the topic and said angrily, "Anyway, I don't care. I don't want to stay here. I want to go back to the deity sea." Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "The mystic realm has disappeared and the celestial pagoda is closed. No one can enter the celestial pagoda anymore." "What?" Lan Kuan was stunned. Its big eyes were covered with a layer of mist. It said with tears in its eyes, "Then I will never be able to return to the deity sea." "Woo woo woo. You bastard, you big liar." Ji Tianqing said indifferently, "What's so good about staying in the deity sea? It's boring and you can't break through the saint realm, let alone reach the immortal realm. You will be safe in this paradise and there will be others to relieve your boredom. I can also guide you in your cultivation and help you break through the saint realm as soon as possible, or even reach the immortal realm." Lan Kuan said gloomily, "Even if I was the only one in the deity sea, it would still be better than here. They all bullied me. Especially that black monster." The black monster it was referring to was the guardian deity of the earth spirit race, the divine armor of Xitigarbha. Ji Tianqing was so angry that he laughed. He scolded, "You have the nerve to say that they bullied you? Weren't you the one who went to the peaceful Earth City to cause trouble first? If you didn't go to the peaceful Earth City to cause trouble, would they have attacked you?" Lan Kuan was speechless. It couldn't refute him. It muttered weakly, "Then you threw me here in a completely unfamiliar environment. Of course I had to protect myself. Also, I was very angry at the time and needed to vent my anger. Who knew that they would be so petty? I only flopped around a few times and spilled some water." It didn't even have the courage to speak anymore, and its voice became softer and softer. Ji Tianqing sneered again. "You fat fish, don't you know what kind of body you are? You flopped around a few times and the earth cracked for them. You spilled some water, and the result was a flood. As one of the 7 ancestors of the monster race, can't you be more careful? Can't you be more reserved?" Lan Kuan stared blankly at him. After a long silence, it pursed its lips and said, "But I didn't want to hurt them. I didn't do it on purpose." Ji Tianqing purposely kept a straight face and continued scolding, "It's enough that you went to cause trouble once. Why did you go and cause trouble every few days? Did you think that you were playing with them? With your mountain-sized body, who would dare to play with you like that? Tell me honestly, did you get addicted to playing with them? Did you think it was fun?" Lan Kuan opened its eyes wide, revealing a clear and innocent expression. It looked like it wanted to retort but didn't dare to open its mouth. Ji Tianqing pretended to be angry and asked, "Do you know your mistake now?" Lan Kuan hesitated for a moment before nodding. Ji Tianqing asked again, "Then will you go and cause trouble again next time?" Lan Kuan nodded again without hesitation. It looked like it was accepting criticism humbly. Ji Tianqing immediately rolled his eyes and said angrily, "I seriously suspect that you're a stupid fat fish." Lan Kuan didn't understand what he meant and looked at him in confusion. Ji Tianqing was too lazy to say more and said with a straight face, "In view of your low IQ, I order you to stay here and cultivate well. Strive to break through to the Saint Realm as soon as possible. When you break through to the Martial Sage Realm, I will find you an excellent partner and let him teach you." Lan Kuan's eyes suddenly brightened and asked subconsciously, "What partner? It's definitely not that ugly black monster, right?" Ji Tianqing revealed a meaningful smile and shook his head, "Of course not. Your future partner is a wise and carefree white dragon." "Dragon?" Lan Kuan's eyes brightened and asked eagerly, "Where is it? Can I take a look at it first? What does it look like? If it is ugly, then I won't play with it." Chapter 2011. Lan Kuan's temperament and intelligence were similar to that of a child. It was pure and kind. Originally, it was filled with resentment and wanted to leave the sword world as soon as possible. After being lectured by Ji Tianqing, it had forgotten its original intention. Especially when it knew that it would have a white dragon as its companion in the future, all its attention was attracted to it. It did not want to leave the sword world and its mind was filled with fantasies. What did the legendary dragon look like? Seeing its reaction, Ji Tianqing laughed in his heart. His plan of raising a Kuan had finally taken a big step. Hence, he pretended to be serious and said to Lan Kuan, "I forgot to tell you that no one in this world can enter the secret realm and return to the Holy Pagoda except for me. Only I have the secret key to the Holy Pagoda and can enter and leave at will. So, as long as you stay here and cultivate, you will be able to break through to the Holy Pagoda. After you break through to the Martial Sage Realm, I will bring you back to the Deity Sea." Lan Kuan was surprised when it heard that. "Really? That's great. I still have a chance to return to the Deity Sea. Big liar, you must keep your word and not lie to me again." Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered in his heart, "Why does it sound so awkward?" However, he knew that Lan Kuan's intelligence was not high and he did not argue with it. "Fat-head fish, you are cultivating based on your talent now and there is no pattern. This progress is too slow. I will teach you a holy skill that will allow your strength to soar and improve rapidly." "Great, great." Lan Kuan nodded and asked expectantly, "What is the holy skill? Can I reach the God state if I master it?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Reaching the God state is not a problem but it will take some time. This holy skill is called the Sky Devouring skill and it is one of the ancient demonic skills. It is a king-grade divine skill created by the Kuan tribe. In fact, he had obtained half of the Sun-Devouring divine skill from Yang Tian's relics and it was similar to the Sky-Devouring skill. However, the Sun-Devouring divine skill was a demonic skill created by the Golden Crow. The Sky-Devouring skill was created by the Kuan tribe and it was most compatible with Lan Kuan's talent. Lan Kuan was stunned and he asked curiously, "Big liar, where did you come from? How do you know our secret technique?" Ji Tianqing frowned and said in a serious tone, "Change the way you address me and I'll tell you." "But, if I don't call you a big liar, what should I call you?" Lan Kuan looked at him with bright eyes. Seeing how cute it was, Ji Tianqing tolerated it and didn't care about its rude words. "You can call me Young Master Ji, Young Master, or Master." Lan Kuan blinked his big eyes and asked, "Master? What you mean is that you want me to acknowledge you as my master?" Ji Tianqing explained patiently, "The one who imparts the Tao is the teacher. Since I taught you the heaven-devouring art, I am your teacher. Moreover, there are countless people in the world who want to take me as their master. It's your honor to be my disciple. Lon Kuan instinctively shook his head and said with a pout, although I really want to believe you, I keep feeling that you seem to be bragging. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and snapped, are you going to be my disciple or not? If you don't, you won't be able to learn the heaven-devouring art. If you don't learn the heaven-devouring art, you won't be able to break through to the martial sage realm. If you don't break through to the martial sage realm, you won't be able to return to the deity sea. Lon Kuan panicked and hurriedly nodded, I'll acknowledge you. I'll acknowledge you. Great. Master. What the hell is master? Ji Tianqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then, he activated his qi and slowly stretched out his right palm. A ball of white light shot out. The white light contained a vast amount of information and recorded the first part of the heaven-devouring art. The ancient demonic heaven-devouring art was divided into 3 parts, upper, middle, and lower. When the upper part was cultivated to its peak, one could reach the martial god realm. When the middle part was cultivated to its peak, one could reach the peak of the god realm. As for the lower part, when cultivated to its peak, one could reach the peak of the god realm. Ji Tianqing slowly sent the ball of white light, which contained a supreme divine art, into Lon Kuan's mind. The sacred and vast white light turned into a surging flood and immediately poured into Lon Kuan's mind. Lon Kuan was caught off guard and was hit by the vast amount of information. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. Seeing Lon Kuan slowly sink to the bottom of the lake, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but smile. He muttered to himself, meeting me is your fortune from 3 lifetimes. The heaven-devouring art has been lost for many years. Apart from me, there is probably no one else who can master the complete art. With that, he turned and left the lake, flying north. Soon, he arrived at the depths of the boundless mountain range and stopped above a valley. This valley had expanded to a radius of 300 miles and the surrounding mountains had also risen by 10,000 feet. Inside the valley, there was a 5-colored light barrier covering a radius of 300 miles that enveloped the entire valley. The 5-colored light barrier emitted a mysterious and powerful energy fluctuation that made people not dare to approach it. The valley had become a forbidden area. This was where the Yang tomb was located. The god-level formation protecting the Yang tomb had already recovered 50% of its power. Ordinary martial saints couldn't break it. Back then, Ji Tianqing hadn't reached the tribulation-passing realm and hadn't recovered Kenshin's memories. When he discovered the Yang tomb, he was still looking forward to having the burial of heaven help him open the Yang tomb when he was stronger. Now, there was no need for that at all. This was a backup plan he had left behind back then, hiding a shocking mystery. He was well aware of the truth of this shocking mystery, so why would he need to open it and investigate it? Ji Tianqing stood above the Yang tomb and quietly pondered for a moment before muttering, when I return to the spirit realm, I'll open the Yang tomb. When that time comes, I'll definitely shock the world. With that, he collected his thoughts and turned to leave. But as soon as he turned around, he saw a towering ancient tree on the mountain to the west of the valley. That towering ancient tree was incomparably majestic. It was actually more than 2,000 feet tall, like a majestic dark green mountain peak. Millions of branches and leaves spread out, covering a radius of several hundred miles. The towering ancient tree absorbed the 5-colored spirit qi emitted by the Yang tomb to its heart's content. The branches and leaves all over its body were sparkling green, releasing a dense green wood vitality. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing showed a gratified smile and walked in front of the ancient tree. Green light flashed from the ancient tree, and a white-haired old man in black robes immediately appeared, bowing respectfully. Sanju greets Master. Without a doubt, this towering ancient tree was forefather Sanju. Ever since he fused with the green light treasure tree, he had been cultivating in the sword world. Without the corruption of the mortal world, his heart was no longer bewitched by profit and slaughter. His temperament had also returned to nature, becoming kind and gentle. The current him truly had the demeanor of a transcendent being. Ji Tianqing sized him up and nodded slightly. Sanju, you're about to undergo your tribulation, right? Forefather Sanju bowed and answered, Master is wise. Sanju is currently preparing to welcome the arrival of the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianqing nodded and said meaningfully, everything in the world has a chance to become a god, even plants and trees are the same. As long as you successfully pass the heavenly tribulation and cultivate here in peace, you will also be able to ascend to godhood in the future. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.